I'm Wyatt Cash at Scoop News Group, and we're here with Dave Egts, Chief Technologist, North America Public Sector with Red Hat. Dave, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here, Wyatt.
Let me start by asking, how has the federal government made progress in the recent year on its goals for digital transformation?
Yeah, well, given all the disruption with COVID, I would have thought that they'd be behind, but in many cases, I've actually seen agencies get ahead of their goals. And let me give you an example with the IRS. So you can imagine all the unplanned work that they had in the last year to getting out, get my payment, and so many other unplanned but essential initiatives to help save the US economy. When I spoke with Dr. Ann Shepard, the Associate CIO of the IRS, she told me that COVID actually forced her and her people out of their comfort zones to challenge the status quo. So by getting her leadership and her teams to rally around common goals, they developed a shared consciousness that helped them accelerate the roadmap by 2 to 3 years. So this would have never happened without strong leadership to challenge these preconceived notions, resulting in accelerated and improved service delivery.
That's impressive. Next, how have agencies with missions at the edge been able to improve success with emerging technologies like cloud?
Yeah, well, years ago, I used to talk about the 4 footprints, for application deployment, where, you had physical hardware, you had virtualized infrastructure, you had the private cloud, and then the public cloud. And back then, I talked about the need for this open substrate that would stay the same, so all of these footprints could be different underneath it. And this allowed agencies to use what they know on premise to get to the cloud faster, because the applications they built could move more easily to these other footprints in their IT estate. So if we fast forward to today, we got the emergence of edge computing in the enterprise, and now we go from 4 footprints now to a 5th footprint, right? So edge computing provides all these really great capabilities that agencies never had before, but edge computing also adds more complexity because you're adding another footprint to develop for, operate, and secure. And so this makes the need for this open substrate that I talked about years ago even more important by enabling this repeatability between all 5 of these footprints to minimize the differences that drive costs and security risk down, and efficiency and service delivery improvements that ultimately help drive end user satisfaction up.
Well, next, how do you see the role Zero Trust will play in securing agencies' modern technology architectures?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the past, agencies would do physical perimeter security with gates, guards, and guns, right? And similarly with government IT, perimeter security included firewalls and air gaps. But both physical security and IT security's goal was to keep the good people inside the perimeter and the bad people outside. But today, the perimeter security is no longer useful for a variety of reasons. So first, you got agencies that are moving to the cloud and edge, and their workloads and data are no longer within the physical perimeter of a government data center. Second, with COVID, these government workers are no longer within the perimeter of the government facility. So they're working from home and may even be using non-work assets to perform their work. And then third, not only are the good people and the workloads and the data outside the perimeter, but there's a really good chance that bad actors are already inside the perimeter and we don't know it. So then I think it's like, oh, what do we do? Who should we trust? Well, the answer is nobody, right? And so trust nobody by default. And that's the premise behind Zero Trust. So for those that want to learn more about Zero Trust, I always turn back to a lot of the publications that NIST has done. So one of my favorites on this topic is Special Publication 800-207, and it's called Zero Trust Architecture. And it covers the definitions, the deployment models, the use cases that are not only applicable to the public sector agencies, but it's also applicable to the corporate environments in the private sector too.
And lastly, David, what emerging technologies are going to have the biggest impact on the government of tomorrow?
Yeah, well, to me, it's all about automation, right? And the mantra I say all the time is that in order to innovate, you need to first automate. So let's unpack this to discuss why. The biggest impact on the government of tomorrow is improving service delivery to the end users, full stop. If the users aren't delighted, or if the users are delighted, the government wins. And the way service delivery is improved with new and emerging technologies, that's great. And there's no shortage of these new and cool emerging technologies. But unfortunately, agencies have no time to map how these cool technologies can improve service delivery because they're stuck doing the toil and drudgery that's essential just to keep the lights on. And so by automating as much as possible, agencies will free their time and cognitive space to think about the art of the possible to delight their customers through the use of emerging technologies. However, none of this innovation can begin without first automating away the toil and drudgery so they can get started.
Well, those are some great points. Dave Egts, thank you so much for sharing some of your insights on modernizing the government space and sharing some of your other thoughts about the future.
Thanks, Wyatt.